Hello, horror hounds, he said through blocked up sinuses. YouTube channel Geek Legion of Doom has reached a phenomenal milestone, 10,000 subscribers, and Leo from that channel has set up a sort of joint giveaway / tag video. I'll link to his original video so he can explain all of the rules, but Deadly Dames Horror Extravaganza were kind enough to tag me in their video, so I'm doing a response and I'll tag in turn, but this is also going to function as an entry into the Geek Legion of Doom giveaway competition. And the tag challenge competition entry that he set has been a really intriguing one. I've been mulling over this for the last 24 hours. The idea is to name your top 10 favourite non-franchised films. So any film you want to choose cannot have a sequel, cannot have a prequel, cannot have been remade, cannot be a remake of an earlier film. That means no Exorcist, no Jaws, no Psycho, no The Birds, because The Birds has got a crappy sequel. And you're thinking, oh, The Raid kicked ass. Oh no, there's The Raid 2. No Indiana Jones. So I've put together my list of 10 and already on the way home realised that I've got no Coen Brothers movies in there. Enter the Dragon's not in there. Weirdly, I was walking home this evening and went, dude, you haven't put Enter the Dragon in your top 10. So which instantly makes this list absolutely void. But I'm going to stick with what I've got. I think I've got 10 really interesting movies. I think I've got a spread of interesting genres. And obviously any of these lists we put together are all only for fun anyway, and they're all transient. But it's a really good it's a really good question. It's really good to think about everything's franchised now, everything's sequelized. And it's been going on for a long time. Let's not pretend it's a new phenomenon. It just seems to be. But I'm going to give a couple of honourable mentions because I asked my better half, oh, what would you include last night in bed? And she said, she had a little mull over and she said she'd definitely include A Knight's Tale and 10 Things I Hate About You. And I seriously considered bumping out one of these to include 10 Things I Hate About You, because that movie is about as close to perfect as you can get. In my Q&A video, Rosenfield 10 asked me to name my favourite rom-com, and I don't know why 10 Things slipped out of my mind. It's practically a perfect teen movie. It's practically a perfect romantic comedy. It's based on some excellent source material. But the list I've put together that I'm going to stick with, you might as well stick to your guns. Starts off, one movie instantly popped into my head that had to be on the list, no question. And one of the things Leo did say is he will allow films that have had comics, have had TV shows, just have to have no other associated films. So I haven't put these in order, but if I had, the number one spot easily, since I can't choose Jaws, would go to Flash Gordon. The first film I ever saw on the big screen, my dad took me and my brother to see Flash Gordon. And it blew my mind. I'm really pleased that in the last few years, it's been gaining some traction. Ted helped. Thank you, Seth MacFarlane. There's a sentence I never thought I'd say. And the love for Flash Gordon is coming back. I think it's a riot. It's joyous. It's multicoloured. It's action. It's adventure. It's the right kind of cheese. Brian Blessed. A Queen soundtrack. Flash Gordon is it. I mean, so when I knew I was going to include Flash Gordon, I spent the better part of yesterday evening randomly saying, what do you mean Flash Gordon approaching? And I seriously have to stick that movie on again over Christmas. I love Flash Gordon. Next on the list, I'm starting to think, right, I have to include blah or blah. And people who regularly watch this channel will know I have to include a Dario Argento movie. the man is a god. And I can't choose Suspiria, and not just because of the recent remakes. Suspiria itself has sequels. Luckily, in my humble opinion, Profondo Rosso just edges out Suspiria as his best movie. Deep Red. It's probably pound for pound the best Giallo movie ever made. I think it's as close as he's come to perfection, and I actually think he's achieved perfection with Profondo Rosso. So, number 2, Deep Red. Number 3. Now, this is the one I was thinking of bumping for 10 things. I was giving some serious chin-stroking consideration to it, but I've decided to stick with it because I want to talk just a little bit about what I think is Christopher Nolan's best movie. Bearing in mind I haven't seen Dunkirk, so I haven't seen everything he's done. And it's not Inception. The Prestige is by far and away Christopher Nolan's best movie. Fantastic performances by Hugh Jackman, Christian Bale, and Michael Caine. I love the world you enter into it, the feel of it, the dueling magicians or illusionists, the reveals. There aren't really any twists. There's a thing that gets revealed that I think the audience is supposed to be ahead of the curve on. You're supposed to have worked it out before one of the characters does. I think it's a remarkable piece of work, made even more remarkable by the rewatchability factor. It's like a meticulous piece of clockwork, and it talks about stage illusionism as, I think, a metaphor for filmmaking. The whole process of filmmaking is an illusion. It's a magic trick. And when you know how the tricks work in The Prestige, and you know how the film works, you can go back and watch it and see the fine clockwork and the mechanisms and everything. And I actually think the enjoyment is heightened. Also, excuse me, it's got one of the best entrances in the whole of cinema, in my opinion, which is David Bowie as Tesla. And this won't be the first time David Bowie appears on my list. Next, I thought I have to include an Alfred Hitchcock film, surely. And I have to include a Cary Grant movie because he's my favourite actor of all time. So rather than having them take up 2 spots, I chose North by Northwest, which marries the both of those. Plus, it's a damn fine film. If you haven't seen North by Northwest and you like thrillers, you like your intrigue movies, you like your everyman caught up in a whirlwind of plotting and sides and good versus evil, fighting to keep his head above water and to clear his name. Oh my word, North by Northwest, treat yourself. Next, a film that I get probably the most regular comments on beneath the review I did for it. A film that is building up a really large and evangelical following year on year. More people are finding it, and I think the people that find it then really try and evangelize about it. I still don't think enough people have seen Session 9. I think it's a phenomenal film. It's scary. It's the tone and feel of it really creeps under your skin, and then it leaves you with just a thought that it echoes and reverberates around my head a lot. I won't talk any more about that because I reviewed Session 9 a long time ago. But I know from the comments that keep popping in beneath that video that there are a lot of people who are very passionate about that movie, as I am. Session 9, phenomenal. What's next? There are a couple of movies that I actually reached out to Leo from Geek Legion of Doom and said, are these allowed? And luckily he sort of adjudicated and said, yeah, they're both allowed. And the next one on the list, I'm really glad I was allowed to include this because I was thinking, could this be considered a sequel to James Whale's Frankenstein? And there is an argument that could be made, but kindly Leo adjudicated and said, no, it's not a sequel, it's a standalone movie, and it's Young Frankenstein. It's not really a horror comedy. There's not really any horror elements to it, but it kind of is a horror comedy. If you accept it as a horror comedy, it's the greatest horror comedy ever made. It's certainly one of my favourite comedy movies of all time. I just have to think about Young Frankenstein, and it makes me feel happy. I'm a huge fan of Gene Wilder, and I couldn't choose Willy Wonka. Thanks a lot, Tim Burton. But luckily, I get to choose Young Frankenstein. And I think it's a work of absolute genius. It's got such a heart to it. It's got such a love of the James Whale movie that it's sort of satirising a little bit, poking fun at, loving fun. It's got Madeline Kahn in it, who is just... everyone knocks their performances out of the park. All the jokes hit. This is a comedy that has a 100% joke hit rate. End of discussion. Put the candle back. Second outing for David Bowie on the list. And Mandy from Deadly Doze put this in her top 10, and I agree wholeheartedly, Labyrinth. We must thank the cinematic gods that no one has ever got any traction on a Labyrinth remake or a Labyrinth sequel. This is a world you just put yourself into and go with it. Just like David Bowie must have looked around on set one day, just as Jareth, with his jodhpurs and his codpiece and his mullet, surrounded by Muppets, about to sing Dance Magic Dance, and he must have thought to himself, just go for it, David. Just go for it. Labyrinth it's close to perfection. I love it. Now, actual perfection. Powell and Pressburger's A Matter of Life and Death. I don't want to say anything really about it, because if you haven't seen A Matter of Life and Death, you will, your heart will swell. For us horror fans out there, there's a weird sort of allusion to A Matter of Life and Death in Exorcist 3. The start of Captain America, the First Avenger, is a nod to A Matter of Life and Death. It is an astoundingly beautiful, well put together, sort of quasi-fantasy movie. And I won't say any more about it. It's an absolute masterpiece. It's cinematic perfection. A Matter of Life and Death had to be on the list. Penultimate entry is I was mulling Akira, but because I wanted an anime movie on the list, and I decided to ditch Akira and include Princess Mononoke because I can still vividly remember the first time I watched that movie and was just swept away with it. And about 2/3 of the way through the movie, I turned to my friend who I was watching it with and said, I have absolutely no idea what's going to happen next. And I love that about this movie. An awful lot of movies are rote and predictable, and you can kind of guess the beats that are coming. Princess Mononoke is a wonderful story, wonderfully told. Told kind of unlike any other. If anything was going to edge out Princess Mononoke, it wouldn't have been Akira, it would have been... oh my god, what's the one with... I've gone completely blank. What's the one with No Face, where the girl's parents get turned into pigs and she goes, is it Howl's Moving Castle? Or am I thinking of a different one? Anyway, I went for Princess Mononoke, and now I'm reconsidering that it should have been the film I can't remember. That might be Howl's Moving Castle. Can't remember. The one with the dragon in it and No Face. And finally, the second one that Leo adjudicated on and said that he would allow it because technically, and thank you for letting me include it, Leo, it doesn't have any sequels or prequels, even though there are hundreds of King Arthur movies. I really wanted to include John Boorman's Excalibur. Is it perfect? No. Is it everything I want from a King Arthur movie? Pretty much, yes. Except maybe another hour of it, just to revel in the absolute sheer nuttiness of it. It's got the best Merlin I've ever seen, Nicole Williamson, Helen Mirren, Gabriel Byrne, a really young Liam Neeson in one of his first, if not his first role. I love the fact that all of the characters don't speak with received pronunciation like Royal Shakespeare Company actors. I love the fact that there's it gets a bit muddy and a bit down and dirty, and then later on in the Camelot section, Arthur looks like one of the Bee Gees a little bit, and then Mordred is really weird and creepy with that gold sort of cherub sun child mask on. It's so overwrought, it's so over the top, it's absolutely gloriously fabulous. So I'm nudging on 17 minutes now. Those are my top 10. There is one channel and one channel only I want to tag because these gentlemen are. If you want to do the tag, check out Leo's original video. It's open to everyone. The competition actually doesn't end till January the 15th. He's been very accommodating with Christmas and New Year as well. But these guys are very, very thoughtful about movies. They think of movies that I don't think about and I've forgotten about. Rosenfield 10, Jim and Joe. I would love to hear your top 10 non-franchised movies of all time. I'm sure you'll redress the cosmic balance and put a Coen Brothers movie in there. I'm sure you will. Speed Racer. I didn't include Speed Racer. I love Speed Racer, but that's a conversation for another day. Peace. Merry Christmas.